Hey everyone, welcome to episode 42 of Qore, presented by the PlayStation Network. I'm your host, Veronica Belmont. Do you feel like you have a distinct lack of dragons in your life? Elder Scrolls V Skyrim has those and more in its sprawling, adventure-filled world. Bethesda has been hard at work creating the newest game in the Elder Scrolls saga. And if there were ever a time to use the word epic, this would be it. Todd Howard gives us the details on fighting gods, dragons, and of course, saving the world.
Your decisions, who you want to side with, affect the events that are going to happen.
Then take a trip through time in the latest from the Assassin's Creed series, Revelations. This time, you'll be playing as all three of the lead characters from the previous games: Altair, Ezio, and Desmond.
Gather your men. This will attract some attention.
What mysterious revelations will you uncover? There's no doubt that Uncharted 2 was a huge game, but the team at Naughty Dog has managed to make Uncharted 3 even bigger and more explosive than ever.
Perfect.
We went down to the Santa Monica studio to see the people and tech that made it all possible.
One of the very first challenges we came up with was how do we actually build this thing?
If you're looking for some single-player or co-op fun with the whole family, check out Rayman Origins. This puzzle-solving platformer will have you fighting creatures from Rayman's nightmares alongside your friends. All this and more in episode 42 of Qore, presented by the PlayStation Network. I'll see you on the inside. In the peaceful province of Skyrim, lush green fields are bordered by babbling brooks. The townsfolk go about their humble tasks, building a solid future for their families. Gentle creatures frolic through the forest, and oh dear God, dragons! Skyrim is a massively, huge fantasy undertaking by Bethesda, masters of so many RPG fan favorites, including Fallout 3 and, of course, the other Elder Scrolls games. With that lineage, game director Todd Howard has got the dragons right in the palm of his hand. He explained just a few of the ways you could spend more than 300 hours in the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim.
The setting in this one is Skyrim. It is the northernmost province in the fantasy world of the Elder Scrolls Tamriel, and it's the home of the Nord, so it's a very rugged environment. There's a lot of snow, but there's also a lot of lush forests and tundra, very Scandinavian in how it feels. We treat each Elder Scrolls game as its own. They each have the same goal, which is to have this big, huge, open fantasy world where you can do what you want, but they're each their own story, and the history of the universe just kind of builds each game, but they aren't sequels in the way that people are used to.
In fact, the events of Skyrim take place 200 years after we last left Tamriel. A lot has changed in that time. For example, there is a very angry god, Alduin, who plans to eat the world. And in all that chaos, mythical dragons have reappeared, looking to eat, everything else. The fate of it all is in the hands of a certain dragonborn hero, you. But even though each gamer has the same ultimate goal, your path is unique.
There's a lot of points in the story where your decisions, who you want to side with, affect the events that are going to happen. And then because I did these dungeons and you did these, this new quest is now going to tailor itself differently for me than it is for you.
And it's not just the quest lines and NPC interactions that are tailored just for you.
It's coming loose. I can feel it.
Fighting also reflects your individual playstyle. Sword flourish.
Combat's changed a lot in subtle ways. You can dual wield, you can put weapons in either hand, you can put spells in either hand, and then just the animation of it, so the combat loop of being able to bash and block and attack and power attack and how they animate and stagger back, all of that, even though at a base level it's similar, the pace of it ends up very different, the visual aspect of it ends up very different. We have all of the 10 classic Elder Scrolls races, from the Dark Elves, the Wood Elves, the other beast races like the Orcs, the Khajiits, Argonians, then the human races. As far as classes, we've now made the system classless, so you don't start the game and pick a class. You have all 18 skills, and then you just use them. So you don't have to start the game and say, well, I want to do exactly this, and then find out later you didn't think that was fun and start over. You can your character is more malleable. And then when you level up, you get to pick a perk, and we have, including the ranks right now, around 280 of those.
And what perks up Todd Howard when he's playing Skyrim?
I kind of move between the skills depending on my mood. I try to try them all out. Archery is a lot of fun for people. We spend a lot of time on that, and you can get perks where you can slow down time when you zoom in with the bow. Even a skill like blocking with the shield. There's a lot of cool perks there for doing power bashes with it. In the magic skills, there's a lot of really, really cool perks. So we're happy with how not only the magic system and perks turned out, but then the spells that you unlock and can use. A lot more handcrafted in terms of magic this time.
Weapon and item management and value has been updated since the last Elder Scrolls game.
Whereas in Oblivion, we had a system where the weapons and armor decay. We kind of felt like that ended up being a maintenance activity. But you never felt like you were making your weapons better, and we've kind of reversed that where now you improve them. In the game, you create weapons with the smithing skill. Depending on how difficult the weapon is to create, you need to also have a perk. So if you're going to create Daedric weapons, which are these really high-powered weapons we have, you need to have a perk that you've unlocked to do it, as well as all the materials, including the heart of a Daedra. The inventory is all very visual. We took a lot of inspiration from Apple, actually. Like, well, what if Apple built a fantasy game? How would they do it? What would it look like? And so all of the items are modeled in 3D. You can spin them all around and look at them. Oh, there's this detailed, shiny rabbit leg that I can then take and cook.
Hey, now try to hold off on killing things for a second and take a moment to look around you at the world itself. This fantasy world looks pretty darn realistic.
We've redone all of the graphics, all of the gameplay systems. The scripting system is new, the whole face system is new, so it's all part of our technology for building these massive worlds. We have full shadows on everything, something that we didn't have before because our environments are so dynamic. We have to do every shadow real time, every frame, update it, the sun can move, all of those things. So it's kind of tricky to do that in our kind of game, but we got all that working now. New tree system, so just the foliage is a lot denser, how it animates. New water system, the rivers have flow. So there's a little joy in fighting somebody and the guy dies, he falls in the river and you watch him float on down. And then the clouds, our clouds actually have normal maps. So when the light hits the cloud, it reacts in a way that you would expect, because all of our time of day and weather and all of that is dynamic. Like the aurora borealis, so there's a random chance when the sun sets or at night, a certain time of day, the auroras come out. And still, when I see that in the game, I'm like, I just stop. Oh my God, that looks awesome.
We definitely agree. All that obsession and attention to detail from the entire Bethesda team has paid off. From the smallest leaf to the biggest dragon, you can get lost for hours in this massive world and enjoy every second of it. So call in sick and turn off your cell phone. Skyrim is coming, and you've got a world to save. You can free run and free fall almost as easily as you travel through time and memory. But that's just a start in this historical sci-fi setting. It's got so much more, from fluid combat to twisting storylines.
You fit your father's shoes as if they had been tailored to your feet.
So climb the tallest building and leap before you look. It's gotta be Assassin's Creed Revelations. Alex Amancio, creative director on the game, gave us a tour through the old world.
What characters are the stars of Revelations?
Well, Ezio is definitely the star, but we also feature, obviously, Desmond. We're going to learn a lot more about that character. You know, he's always been a bit two-dimensional. We're actually adding a lot of depth to the character, and we're also going to be playing Altair.
Really?
Yeah.
So all three of the big stars are back in this one game?
Exactly.
You are Ezio Auditore.
See. Sorry for the delay.
Ezio, essentially, after the events of Brotherhood, he sort of killed all his enemies, sort of resolved all his different issues, and he finds himself looking back upon his life, and he's always been a very reactive character.
Gather your men. This will attract some attention.
In Revelations, he decides to sort of seek out the answers for himself, and he follows the footsteps, the trail of Altair, and that leads him to Masyaf, where he hopes to find some sort of secret documents that are hidden in a library vault. Upon reaching Masyaf, he finds it completely sort of littered with Templars. So what starts off as sort of an inner journey turns into a race against time.
Our struggle seems to move in one direction only, towards chaos.
What's happening with Desmond now? Where do we pick up from the Brotherhood storyline?
Well, as you know, Desmond falls into a coma at the end of Brotherhood. To sort of keep him alive and keep his consciousness from falling into limbo, they plug him back into the Animus. But he's in such a weak state that instead of falling down into the White Room, which is the typical loading program for the Animus, he falls straight down into what we call the Black Room, which is, think of it as DOS. Very powerful, but it's not meant for a user. So what happens is this place, sort of the physicality of it, gets populated by bits and fragments of Desmond's subconscious. It's really a cool opportunity for us to explore a bit more about Desmond's past and add a little bit more depth to that character.
What the hell?
What different locations will we see?
We're going to have Constantinople, which is our sort of major city. And we also feature a brand new city, sort of a new approach to cities from in Assassin's Creed. It's called Cappadocia, and it's an underground city. It's actually based on a real location where around 10,000 people lived for a little over 100 years.
As you move within the historical cities, your weapons not only look badass, but they also help you get around.
The hook blade is an Ottoman modification to the hidden blade.
Where is your hook blade? My hook blade.
What this does, actually two things. First of all, it improves navigation, speeds it up by about 25 to 30%, adds a lot more fluidity. Plus, it actually bridges navigation and combat. So the hook blade, allows you to enter combat faster, exit combat faster, and also adds a lot of really cool, finishing moves. Now that Ezio is sort of older and wiser, Eagle Vision has evolved into what we call Eagle Sense. Eagle Sense is, now wiser. He not only uses his eyes, but also his instincts. So, this lets you do really cool stuff like, for instance, get on a rooftop, find the trail of an enemy, follow that to a crowd, and then be able to sort of find that bad guy in the crowd.
Are there going to be any more Borgia towers that we get to topple?
We are keeping a version of that mechanic. This sort of consolidates not only the Borgia towers, but the Assassin's Guild and City Improvement all into one system.
While not the center point of the game, the cool multiplayer moments have received an update since Brotherhood.
First of all, we listened to what the fans had to say and we addressed the issues that we had, for example, player matching. And then what we did is we added new locations, we added new game modes, and we completely revamped and added new characters and player customization. We find that fans of Assassin's Creed really love the narrative. They like the story, and since in multiplayer you are playing Templars, we really wanted to sort of give a little more information about what's going on with Abstergo, the Templars. So we added a narrative element to multiplayer.
A narrative element, really?
As you go up in the echelons of Abstergo, that you start getting more and more in the know, and you start having a sense of what actually goes on in Abstergo.
So you're kind of seeing another side of things that you're not getting in the single player mode.
Exactly.
Very cool.
The details in the world come alive, from the big vistas down to the people.
We're scanning our characters, which gives us, a huge jump in quality in terms of the actual appearance of, faces. We revamped our shader system to get more realistic skin shaders, and we're also using a new system we call MoCam, which is sort of a new approach to grabbing facial data for animation.
Don't you ever stop howling.
With the word Revelations in the title, it sounds like the loose ends will be resolved.
This game is the end of the sort of Ezio trilogy. So the character, we will wrap up the Ezio character. We also are wrapping up Altair. Is it going to be the end of Assassin's Creed? Obviously, the universe is extremely rich. There's tons of characters to explore. There's tons of new locations and new timelines people actually want to play in. So even though this could be the end of a cycle, as our game is the end of the Desmond cycle, it doesn't mean it's the end of the actual franchise.
The final journey commences.
We can't wait to see how the story comes together. And if you're new to the series, Ubisoft even bundles the original game on the PS3. From the high-flying acrobatics to its rich setting, this storyline is wrapping up with a bang. What pressing questions will finally be answered in Assassin's Creed Revelations? You just have to step into the Animus one more time to find out. what's in a game? When it's the latest blockbuster Uncharted title, well, that's one doozy of a question. With an epic game comes an epic development process. And, well, everyone wants sequels to go bigger and better. We visited Naughty Dog just as the game was being finished, meeting with lead effects artist Keith Qore, who gave us the broad strokes of, well, how'd they do that? So strap in, pop that Dramamine pill, and join us for a rollicking ride through the adventure behind the adventure in Uncharted 3: Drake's Deception.
Perfect.
How much goes into creating these massive levels? What's the step-by-step process?
It kind of all starts with the concept, right? We need to figure out two aspects. There's the story, really. We need to figure out what is the reason for Drake to go into these environments and how do we actually portray that through the environment. But also there's the artistic aspect of what is the mood of this environment.
The legend crops up over and over. Ubar, Aram of the Pillars.
So once we kind of have those two aspects locked down, we actually start flooding out the levels and try to implement gameplay throughout all of it. Then we sit down and we start working on the actual, the real 3D art. The environment artists get it and they start filling out the details. So we start paying attention to the atmosphere and what sort of life and ambience do we want to put into these environments to try to make them feel a little bit more real.
This, I did.
I know a lot of it takes place in a desert. That must be pretty hard to create.
Yeah, definitely. The desert's been an interesting one for us, mostly because we're faced with the challenge of how do we actually present a hot, dry desert where there's not really anything moving, there's no real life out there. And so what we've come up with is really most of the motion happens from Drake and from the interactions with Drake. And so it's been our big challenge this game to sort of embed Drake more into the actual flow of the dunes and the sands and actually try to animate Drake as if he were struggling to crawl up the sand dunes.
Now, to learn how to do that, did you have to send members of your team out into a deserty environment to kind of get a feel for it?
Yeah, there's these amazing dunes called the Imperial Dunes just outside of Yuma. So we went out there, we went out to the Imperial Dunes with cameras and video recorders and just tons of different toys to play with out in the sand basically, and just spent the entire day running around up and down dunes and driving around through this massive desert to try to find different set pieces and different points of reference that we could actually try to use to inspire us.
So once you have that content, once you have that point of reference, how do you then translate it into technology within the game?
Oh, that's the challenging part, and it really came down to individual thoughts. Like we'd look at the dunes and say, oh man, it's awesome how the sand is actually gusting off the crest of that dune. How can we actually do that? And then since that one's a particle effect, for me, I had to sit down and figure out how to get a nice swirl rolling off of the edge of the dune. There was also things like, well, when he steps, the hole that's left from his foot actually starts to fill in. I mean, it looks like liquid. So seeing those individual things and identifying how do we actually get Drake to leave footprints that are based off of the slope of the surface that blend in with the actual textures and the lighting of the sand dunes that the environment guys and the lighters have worked so hard to create.
You have to make like the sand climbing algorithm.
Yeah, exactly. It's been a challenge.
Is there a moment where you're like, I just can't deal with sand anymore? I have to move on. If I look at one more grain of sand, I'm going to stab my pen through my eye.
Water's actually been that way for us. Yeah.
So what exactly went into that cruise ship scene? I mean, it's obviously a very pivotal moment within the game. What kind of elements did you have to put in there?
Well, it all began with the ocean, actually. I mean, we knew that we wanted to show the approach to the cruise ship, and we wanted to see the cruise ship actually floating on water. The technology needed for a big stormy ocean that's, massive waves that are dynamically driving a boat is completely different than the technology that we need for water gushing down a hallway. One of the very first challenges we came up with was how do we actually build this thing? Like, how do I artistically control this water rushing down a hallway and like bending around the corners, splashing? It's actually a piece of geometry that we have rigged with thousands of joints actually forming, like rising up and down and rushing forward at you. This stormy ocean was a completely different approach because that is entirely dynamically driven and it's actually driving the motion of the boat. So the boat is actually attached to the ocean, and then through essentially physics, we're moving the boat along with the waves. The ability to have Drake stand on something that's moving is such a freeing thing to a game developer. We actually realized that we could, because of the technology where you can make Drake stand on a moving platform, we can actually attach the moving platform to the ocean. And so right now the ocean is actually driving the motion of the cruise ship.
Let's talk about this!
The moving set pieces sound like so much fun. Are there any other ones that are very prominent in the game?
Yeah, one of the other cool ones that we came up with pretty early on, we thought, oh, it'd be awesome if Drake could be in a plane that crashes. For a while, we were debating doing like zero-G sequences and stuff like that.
The mocap actors would love that.
Yeah, seriously. We ended up doing a lot of really cool stuff with the plane almost dynamically tearing apart around you as it's crashing and basically as you're falling and trying to convey that general sense of emotion.
The water is a little bit different than falling out of an airplane. So how are those different to create?
We've had to actually go through and find ways to blend into animations that Drake might actually do when he's falling. But also all the AI, all the cloth, all the physics objects, and even the particles need to imply that you're moving at the speed of gravity or that you're being pressed down by the weight of the force of the G's. Even the slight tilting and banking, we've done a lot of fun things where, like, if you're inside a cargo plane, you lose scope of the horizon, so you can't really tell that the plane's rotating. And so we did a lot with the beam of light shining in through the windows, so that as the plane actually rotates, you see that beam of light moving, and then all of a sudden the boxes inside are starting to slide around, and really kind of trying to find a way to sell the motion, even though you don't have a perspective on the horizon.
As for the people, what kind of changes have you made to the character mapping or the way that you create the look and feel of the characters in the game?
We've definitely added more dynamic attributes to the characters. Drake's hair is finally getting wet. The other big area that we've been pushing is wrinkle maps and actually providing more of the actual points of expression within the faces of the characters as they're animating.
Drake's been through a lot. It's about time it starts showing on his face. Yeah. I mean, he's a good-looking guy, but he's you know, I don't know if he's using an SPF 50. He really needs to bump it up a few levels if he's going to be out in the sun that much.
From the looks of it, Naughty Dog's earning its place in the sun, right alongside its hero. With amazing action spanning oceans, deserts, and skies, Uncharted 3 has us seriously wondering, where will they take Drake next? At least now, we've got a sense of how they'll pull it off in style.
Have there been any major changes to the gameplay mechanics?
Yeah, I think the things that you'll find the most often when you're playing through it is that there's going to be a lot more detail put into the subtleties. We've obviously expanded the close combat, but there's also going to be a lot of other subtleties, such as Drake actually interacting with the environment, placing hands on corners when he runs around walls, things like that. A lot of other character interactions with the different things that are happening in the environment. So as you approach fire, you'll notice that Drake actually interacts slightly differently than when he's running around farther away from the fire. We kind of want to give more of an embedded sense of danger to Drake and involvement with the mood of the environment.
What's in store for multiplayer?
Oh man, just a lot of variety is really what we've been going for. We're just trying to take what we did last game and expand it. We've added a lot to co-op, we've added a lot to the different types of gameplay modes, we've added a lot to the replay factor, if you will, such as the different kickbacks and power plays and things like that to try to break up the game and keep it fun and exciting.
When you've got hands but no arms, feet without legs, and a head but no neck, the third dimension gets confusing. ditto that if you're more blob than person. That's why we're happy to see our favorite armless, legless, neckless thingamabob returning to his roots in an all-new 2D platformer, Rayman Origins. It's been more than 8 years since the last 3D Rayman console game, and 16 years since he appeared in 2D, way back in the original. Rayman creator Michel Ancel is leading production on this title, so it's got the same great polish and humor as the classic. Just because it's 2D doesn't mean it's flat. Look at those details. Rayman Origins boasts some of the sharpest, cleanest 2D graphics we've seen. Almost all of it's hand-drawn on a computer, while much of it is actually painted at a desk and scanned into the game. Keep an eye on the background, foreground, and everywhere, really, to see all the fun moments. More than 100 different characters live in the vibrant world, from the crazy bosses to battle, all the way down to the background friends that just want to lend a hand. It's all so animated. So what's going on in the story? One of the characters, the Bubble Dreamer, has been creating different monsters in his sleep. They've run amok through the peaceful world, and it's up to Rayman and 3 of his friends, Glowbox and 2 Teensies, to restore order. For the first time, up to 4 players can join together in a Rayman game, cooperating and competing on a single PS3. As long as one of you stays alive and rescues the others, the whole team can progress. Friends can join or leave at any time over the entire game. And yes, your attacks can hit your pals. We found the perfect balance of griefing teammates while still working together to win. He's so slap-happy. The platforming gameplay excels. We constantly found areas where the right attack trounced several enemies, flung us over gaps, and otherwise created a natural rhythm. Who knew the little armless, legless guy could be so graceful? Throughout, you'll rescue the game's fairies to earn new abilities, building up new attacks and ways to navigate, like swimming. Those new abilities help you uncover bonus rooms. With more than 50 levels, you'll discover lots of secret nooks. You can replay old areas with new abilities to find new twists. And as you gather looms, you'll unlock completely new levels. The stages are also full of variety. Floating in the wind, flying mosquitoes in a shooter, riding water slides, surfing moving platforms, and more. Sure, we've seen many of these core concepts in other games, but they're still well executed and fun here. It's addictive enough to make you feel like rushing through it all, but take the time to enjoy the view. Rayman Origins deserves it. With the fun single or multiplayer style, range in gameplay, and of course that gorgeous art, Rayman Origins retraces its roots without going back to basics.